Coming up this week, we're going to be chatting with Bernard Spil about the wider adoption of LibreSSL in other communities. He's been doing a lot of work with FreeBSD ports specifically, but he's also working with upstream projects. And as usual, we're going to have all this week's news and answers to your questions on BSD Now, the place to be, SD. Now, episode 82, SSL in the Wild, recorded March 25th, 2015. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad to have you guys with us this week. We got another exciting episode, a lot of cool news, and we're going to get right into it. But, we just got back from Asia BSD Con a couple weeks ago, but it's not too early to start reminding you of the next one you could possibly go to. So it looks like Euro BSD Con 2015,
yes. Call
for papers is now out.
Yes, so they're looking for people to submit to fill up all those talk slots. I'm sure there will be many.
I'm sure there will. It seems like every year it's growing quite a bit.
Yep.
But being held in Sweden this year,
yes.
So I don't know if they've held one there before.
I don't
that
think
might be
so.
First. Yeah. So definitely exciting. But the according to the site, the call for presentation proposals will start Monday the 23rd, so a couple days ago. And it wraps up on 17th of April. So you got approximately 3 weeks time frame there to get your papers in. So also, if you don't like giving, say, a full talk, there's also a call for tutorials, which is a different way to do it as well. So if you're comfortable teaching other people about something maybe that's BSD related, and that's kind of a longer time setting too, as opposed to 45 to 50 minutes. You can take 3 to 6 hours or all day.
Yep.
Oh, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was just... And I also mentioned that, if you're not sure which of your ideas the conference wants to hear about, send all of them and they'll pick one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can give them multiple options. And several speakers gave multiple ones in 2014. So that's not unheard of. And don't hesitate. Maybe you have several things we all want to hear about.
Yes, I remember in Malta, Paul Hanningkamp actually gave 2 different talks. One was about the telescope thing, which was really interesting. And the other one was just about how Unix is terrible.
All right.
It was like the socket APIs are just evil, and I couldn't help but agree.
Well, I know we've given you the breakdown on the different BSDs and the talks coming up at BSD Can this year, but we'd like to see other BSDs get represented, a little bit greater at Euro as well. But that requires you guys to send in talks.
Exactly.
So doing anything cool with any of the BSDs, and come on, net folks, come on out and open everybody. Definitely submit a proposal or 2 if you can.
Exactly.
And that just makes the entire conference just so much more informational and just good for everyone, because there's a lot of stuff. I like listening to the net and OpenBSD talks from time to time just to hear what's going on the other side of the fence.
I know less about what's going on over there than I do about what's going on in FreeBSD, because being in that camp, I hear about the stuff,
Yeah.
There are not very often where there's a talk about FreeBSD where it's like, I didn't know anybody was doing anything like that. With the OpenBSD ones, it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I did not know that. So, yeah, definitely submit your work in progress, folks, and get the talk accepted there. But we'll have the links. To Sweden. That is true. Yeah, if your talk gets accepted, they pay for your travel expenses to get you there in the hotel. So if you're looking for an excuse to get to Sweden, and giving a talk may be a small price to pay. But check out the announcement for all the specific details and requirements on like the paper format, tutorial submissions, and all that. And get that sent in soon. Don't wait. We only got about 2.5 weeks left on that. So try and get it done.
I got to pick something and write something.
Right? Well, cool. Well, okay. So next up, we have Ted Uangst, who we've talked to in the past, and seems like we mentioned him a lot. He's doing a lot on his blog.
His blog has a lot of good stuff.
It does. It does. I found this fascinating this morning. I was reading through it, but his new blog post is talking about his experiences kind of doing recent security patches both in and out of OpenBSD, and he laments a little bit the fact, like, I didn't really sign up for this, but when you write the Signify tool, and it just kind of fell in his lap. But it was a fascinating article. But he said that wasn't the plan originally. But then he goes through like, well, this is how we've dealt with it. So the post kind of takes us through some of the OpenBSD errata patches, explaining how some of them obviously get fixed very quickly, and then what do they do with more complicated ones that maybe need more review. He also talks a little about security and upstream code bases and how sometimes the upstream projects will treat security issues as any other bug. So you got to deal with that.
That's most of his gripe there is when OpenSSL releases the next version to fix a bunch of security flaws, they also include a bunch of features and basically you end up getting this monster diff instead of just most of the patches to fix most of the security issues in the most recent SFAT of OpenSSL ones were tiny. It was like 2-line and 3-line changes. Add an if statement here, or add an extra condition to this if statement, or changes exit to a go to error state, and so on. And those were all really small, but then they drop a diff on it. It's like, oh, the diff between the last version of OpenSSL and this version also includes all this other crap. And it's like, well,
and here's 1,000 other lines you get to wade through to figure out what the real important one was.
And that's really a problem.
Yeah, that is annoying. Yeah, if it's a security thing, for vendors in particular, you just give us separate patches for that, so we know exactly what needs to be fixed and can figure out where to put that in our tree.
Well, especially when you don't want the newer version, you just want the security fixes.
You're correct.
It's like I thought the whole point of using version control systems with like branching and tagging was to be able to go back and be like, oh, here's the last version you were already using with the security patches applied, and we can continue development over here without mixing the two together.
Yeah, it's like this technology has been invented to do things like this very easily. So it'd be nice if more projects would use it a little bit more effectively.
Please do not get your chocolate in my peanut butter.
Right. But no, he talks about some of the different things that have happened, like libx font. That was interesting. I guess there was a typo when they did the build on that. So it's just, this is kind of real world. This is the stuff I experience when we do patches for PCBSD. So reading through this, I was like, yep, that's happened. Yep, done that. So it's kind of neat to read it, Ted. That was a cool blog post. But yeah, he talked a lot about the OpenSSL bit. He talked about how they send patches out to the announced mailing list for OpenBSD, and how some people, of course, immediately want to unsubscribe and can't seem to figure out how to do that because don't bother me with security updates. Jeez. But also another thing where, interestingly enough, the last OpenSSL round of patches that went out, how they found just 45 minutes before they had agreed to release the announcement, they found a problem with the patch. And it had to be written on the last minute, which on the FreeBSD side, we saw that happen because they had to issue a second update right after the first one. Luckily, I was a little behind that day on getting the updates done, so I didn't have
to run it twice.
The second one. Yeah. So that didn't end up being a big deal. But still, I mean, I can relate to all this. But he has a cool pull quote here. But he says, "My number one wish would be that every project provides small patches for security issues. Dropping enormous feature releases along with a note of, oh, and some security too, creates downstream mayhem." So yes, please, all upstream folks, if you're listening, if you hear this episode anytime, just take note of that. Make our lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend you check out his blog post. He basically goes through a bunch of recent patches for different things like exec, tar, xserver, free type, etc. And, kind of explains how each one went and what the good and the bad from each one was. And it's like, well, if we can get it to be like this for all of them, that would be great. And if not, then that's going to continue to cause us headaches well into the future.
Okay. Well, so our next article here, I'll let you tell us a little bit about it, Alan, considering
it's got my face on it.
You wrote. It's got your picture on it.
Yeah.
So what is this, Al? What happened?
Well, it's your fault, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, no, it was Kirk's fault originally because he did the first one and then got me roped in, and then you got roped in. So we blame Kirk.
Yes. So IT Wire, which is a tech site, news and so on, wrote to a bunch of us asking about could you explain some of the differences between FreeBSD and Linux? And so I basically did a little text interview here where it talks about basically what the differences are and then a little bit about the way that I use FreeBSD. But, it kind of slanted towards their opening is for years now, Linux has been all the rage, but in recent times there's been murmuring among many veteran, longtime users because of systemd and various other things. And then it's like, a little while ago they talked to the creator of PCBSD, and they talked about why PCBSD is better than Linux on the desktop, and why it has all these, or how it has features that Linux doesn't have, and how it's actually growing more features instead of just tracking what everybody else is doing. And
Sure.
then so I kind of addressed the same thing, but from the server side. Why is it better to have FreeBSD for a server?
Well, let me read the opening paragraph here, because I think this kind of sums it up in a nutshell why there's so much interest in this topic. But he says here, and all the talk is about the old Unix culture, the way one utility or application is used to do a job, do it well, hand over the output to a second utility to process. Linux, in short, is becoming something like a Swiss Army knife, complicated, and there's been talk of switching to an alternative, and this is where FreeBSD comes in. So I thought that was a kind of a good description of looking back at some of the Unix legacy here and how we're used to doing things and why people are interested in switching. But
Yeah, and the other biggest point I brought up is kind of like you get the long-term support, kind of like Red Hat, right? If you install FreeBSD 10, then you know that you're going to be able to upgrade seamlessly without breaking anything for the next 5 years. But at the same time, unlike Red Hat, you're not stuck with a 5-year-old version of PHP, right?
Sure.
You have the ports tree, which allows you to either go on the quarterly branch and get stable set of packages that aren't going to keep moving out from underneath you, or the latest bleeding edge, so that you can always have the latest version of Node.js or whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then we talked about some of the security features like capsicum and jails, and it's like, well, containers and Docker and C groups and so on Linux have been all the rage for like a year now. But if you ask any person who's ever used them or any of the developers, they're like, yeah, security is not a thing that we do. No, and it's like, well, on BSD we have 15 years of jails being bulletproof, basically.
Secure.
And which one would you rather use?
Yeah, product that's like, oh, well, security, we didn't think about that till after we released and somebody asked us if it was secure or not, or jails where it's like been in production for years as a secure solution. But yeah. So anyway, one of the things TJ wrote here is, if you've been considering switching your servers over from Linux to FreeBSD, but maybe you wanted to hear some firsthand experience, this is the article for you. So there you go, Alan, a little plug. Thanks. You guys need to go read Alan's interview here. But it was a good article, and you got a great picture there with Groff the Goat.
Yeah, I just went through my collection of conference pictures, and I thought that one made me seem the least threatening. All the other ones, I'm just like,
how could anybody think you're threatening? Come on. Well, that was cool. But yep, definitely a great article, and we'll see if they end up doing any more on BSD in the future. And of course, we will bring those to you if they show up. Okay, well, next up we have NetBSD news. Looks like they were ported over to the hard kernel Odroid C1. So, of course, in NetBSD's never-ending quest to run on every single new circuit board that comes out, NetBSD has been ported over to the hard kernel Odroid C1. And the specs on this particular little device is an ARM v7. And it looks like a 1.5 gigahertz, has a gig of RAM, and it's a quad core, by the way, and a gigabit Ethernet for about $35.
That's about the same price as even a Raspberry Pi 2. So,
yeah, that's pretty slick. But looks like the NetBSD's added a special kernel config file for this board's hardware. It's available both in current and in the upcoming 7.0. So you can already grab and start playing with that, I'm sure. And we have links to their wiki page here for more details about it.
It already supports the hardware random number generator, the SD card slot, the gigabit Ethernet, the USB, the serial port, the watchdog timer, so that if it hangs, it'll auto reboot itself.
Nice.
Interrupt controller, the L2 cache, and even the CPU frequency scaling, so you can save power on it. Which is handy if you're going to be running it off batteries or something.
That's pretty nice. So it looks like on the to-do list still they have some USB device modes, simultaneous SD card and eMMC usage. They need eMMC UHS-1 support, and so they need some driver changes, the IR receiver, GPIO.
Oh yeah, I forgot it has infrared too.
Yeah. LTC, and then they haven't done the audio bits on it yet. But this is a way for you guys to start playing with it, and hopefully those things will be added soon. But yeah, that's a cool little device. Okay, so I guess that's the end of our headlines for this week. So before we do our interview, of course, we do want to mention the first sponsor on the show this week, which is going to be IX Systems. And the URL you guys need to go to right now is ixsystems.com/BSD Now, where you can go and fill out the form, let them know that we sent you, and download the handy guide they've put together for things you need to know before you select a vendor for your open source server. You know, the right questions to ask and ways you can talk to management to make that happen, why you'd want to use IX over some other big box production company that really doesn't have the expertise in open source that a company like IX Systems would.
Yeah, basically, we're sure we've convinced all of you already. So it's just providing you the tools to convince the people you have to convince so that you can buy your stuff from IX Systems.
That's right. You need to learn how to speak the manager speak and then make that make sense to them and make that all happen. But yeah, definitely get in touch with these guys. They can build you anything from those small FreeNAS minis, which we've talked about, all the way up to the mega 80 core, what was it, 4 terabytes of RAM or 1 terabyte of RAM?
It had 1 terabyte, but it could support up to 6 terabytes.
Oh gosh, yeah. So we've showed pictures of it. It's basically server porn.
Yep.
It's just crazy stuff they can build. But that's the thing. They can build any of those things, anything in between, and they'll build the solution that works best for you, not just give you what's sitting on the shelf that was built 6 months ago.
Yep.
So definitely get in touch with the guys over at IX and do let them know that we sent you. We would appreciate that.
Yes. Also check out the What's New blog on IX. They have recap from Asia BSD Con.
Oh, nice. Okay.
With a bunch of, I guess Chris wrote that, right?
Yeah, I wrote that.
Yeah.
So I wrote the bulk of it, and then Drew and Ken, my brother, sent a few things in, and they added those. I didn't even look. What pictures did they use? Were the ones
there's
I took?
one from BeehiveCon, which definitely you took, because you can see the edge of the shot is Ken's ear.
Yeah.
And then it shows everybody else. That's cool.
I'm not a professional photographer, guys, but no, I do my best.
They also have a great article over there. Cost is not the only reason to select a storage vendor. So, on top of the fact that IX is already going to be the best price, they also explain why, how it will outperform your Dell or EMC sandbox. And, obviously the price is going to be better, but also the support, If you call Dell support, you get outsourced to somewhere. If you call IX, you get somebody that knows what open source is and what ZFS is and that you're trying to run your virtual machines over iSCSI off your storage appliance and the latency is too high and then, or whatever your problem might be. They're going to actually be able to help you instead of, trying to read off a script.
It is really nice talking to a company that actually employs the developers, right? Like, they have expertise, so they can go walk down the hall and ask a question. And, let's see about doing this and make that work. And yeah, IX Systems, you just don't get that experience elsewhere.
Yes, it's like, I see. Your workload is a little bit different than everybody else's. Here, use this little patch, and now, it'll do what's best for you instead of what's best for most people.
Sure. So again, ixsystems.com/BSD Now, folks. So we're joined now by Bernard Spil, who's here to talk to us about some LibreSSL adoption in FreeBSD ports and some of the wider software ecosystem. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show today, Bernard.
It's great that you're having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we've been looking forward to this for a while since I've been working with you on some of the LibreSSL stuff. But give us a little bit about your background. How did you get into BSD in the first place?
Well, I had a mate. He was, I started running an under-the-desk project at work, and I used Gen2 because I like new things. And he came to me and said, "Well, you might want to try FreeBSD because it's a lot more structured. You don't have to deal with all the versioned configuration files, and it is." So that was a quick fix for me, and I've never left FreeBSD since. So. Every now and then I struggle with some Linux systems and happy to get back.
It just reminds you why you switched in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Everything is in the right place. And so, yeah, that was good.
Yep.
He's left FreeBSD a bit, I believe, but he still comes into the developer channel every now and then. So he's, that's good. And that was 5.4, I guess.
Ooh.
So that's...
Oh, so it's been a while. Okay.
It's been a pretty while, yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you can survive the 5 series and then you're hooked for good.
Wasn't the 6.0
No, it was
very
5.0
bad?
that was really bad. I guess you got in at the end of that, but 6.0 was not
man.
bad
Okay,
at all.
yeah.
That's when I went straight from 4.11 to 6.0 or 6.1 because I managed to avoid 5.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I know that ever since, everybody's scared of the .0 versions? Or
Pretty
is
much,
that...
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I skipped that one. That's
Right.
fine. I'm happy.
Okay. So what first got you interested in LibreSSL and making everything on FreeBSD work with it?
Well, it was the humbug, of course, that went around on the internet. Boring SSL coming up, LibreSSL, and being on the receiving end of some of the OpenSSL fallout. Which Heartbleed was just before that, I believe.
Okay.
At work, I still have the operational responsibility over a couple of web servers, and it's always a chore to get all that stuff up and running. So I thought that a bit of competition for OpenSSL would be good, and actually I think it is. So it's not everybody. So still everywhere you go, everybody's very we need to build a new plugin, or we need to build a new module, or we need to create a new backend for Libre. But so far, I think the fallout is minimal.
Okay. So for those who are maybe a little more unfamiliar with this, what would be some of the advantages of linking your software against LibreSSL instead of OpenSSL, and why are we looking at doing this?
Since they started, they had none of the high-rated vulnerabilities that OpenSSL have suffered. So that's good. And I did some collecting of data last weekend. They removed about 140 lines of code, or 140,000 lines of OpenSSL code. There was a very early report by Bob Beck. So there's a lot less in there that can break. And last week's patch run showed actually that it had, because they had none of the memory errors, they had none of the double freeze, those were non-existent. They had some of the other ones still that came up with the audit, but the engineering practices of OpenBSD just make sure that there's a lot less fallout all around, and so that's good.
Oh, and I think the other...
Well, I know complexity breeds bugs, and that makes me a little worried when your security and crypto and whatnot gets so
well, yeah, it's okay unless you run BIOS, or if you if you want to run anything very old, then you'll still have to have all that stuff.
Right, and I think it was the freak attack or whatever. LibreSSL wasn't vulnerable because they had removed support for all the old export crypto stuff, right?
Yeah, so lots of stuff has been removed early on, actually, but that's also the work that you need to put in with all packages and ports, because they still use some stuff that's ancient and shouldn't be there anymore.
So, how's the work been going to get all the stuff? Some of this work has already been done by the OpenBSD porters to get their software working. So, what's it like to get it to work for the FreeBSD ports tree?
Yeah, so that their ports tree was a good resource to start with, but they really remove stuff. So working with a PCBSD ports tree wasn't that bad, because I could just rip it out and leave it, and that's it. Commit it, and it will be imported, and then it runs. But all the other stuff, if you want to have a proper patch, then you need to think about making it conditional on existing of rand EGD, for instance, which is a blast from the past that just should die very soon.
Yep.
It's a Perl entropy gathering demon. Nothing needs it unless you're running HP UX11i version 2, which it's really silly. So it's all that is the stuff that's been bugging me. But once you get one of these fixed, then the other ones follow pretty quickly. So
it's mostly the same code path.
Yeah, so you add some stuff to the configure, the autoconf stuff, and then put some if-defs around, and that's it. And yeah, I think I've uncovered quite a bit of dead stuff around in the port tree as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've kind of answered some of this, but can you explain some of the different types of changes required to patch software for LibreSSL? What are you specifically ripping out?
Yeah, so EGD is a big one that comes up everywhere, even in the latest versions of Apache.
Okay.
You would think they would know better.
And yeah, well, if you talk to them, they don't want to import your patches because they think that it's too different, LibreSSL. So they want to have a mod TLS or whatever but they don't want to import it. But it's in our port tree now, so that's committed.
That's good.
There's a lot of stuff that uses the desold headers, which is still existing in OpenSSL, and that's been deprecated since 1997 or something, and still code is using the deprecated methods, and you just need to replace them with the new ones from des.h, and that's so those are a lot, and we have a big chunk coming up with SSL v2. Still a lot of stuff requiring SSL v2. I don't know why, because I don't know you guys, but I don't see it anywhere anymore.
Even Windows XP didn't use it. It used SSL v3. Like,
right. Yeah, so by default it was switched off. So everything should have done away with it. So those are coming up, and then there's the smaller ones. But yeah, all around it's still quite a big chunk of work to get it all into the port tree. Proper patches, accepted, upstreaming them wherever possible, and then you find dead projects. And so yeah, I've always wondered. We now have about 25,000 ports. It's only climbing that number, so something must be wrong. So we might need to consider getting rid of some.
The interesting thing is, I have seen quite a few go away, especially when Baptiste did the staging stuff. Anything that didn't get staged went away. So there was a big drop, but we just kept adding more stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Well, they did some cleanup this last week, like moving fonts around and getting rid of some of the really old cruft that's been in there too. Yeah. So I'm happy to see some of that stuff finally happen. You need to prune it.
Yeah, so now I've seen some, and maybe we'll touch on them in the time to come. And there's also the without SSL v2 X build run that's been done by the ports guys, and that brings up a lot more, which could be a bit of follow-up work.
It seems like they should,
because there's more to do.
It seems like they should do a without SSL v3 X run as well.
Right.
Yeah, that was a request, but they started out without SSL v2 X run, and
fix all that first.
The most difficult things that I now run into are where we have open base and ports SSL next to each other. Curl uses GSS, so Kerberos. That links to base, and then you link curl to LibreSSL. So the same goes basically for ports SSL, but you get your knickers in a twist because things just start behaving, misbehaving basically. So those are the difficult ones. And mind you, I'm not a coder, so I'm just hacking around in the ports tree. It seems all good, but I'm not that fancy C coder that finds all of that and fixes it outright. So
cool.
I could use some help.
So yes, that kind of leads into our next question. What are some of the biggest showstoppers and things that don't work yet on FreeBSD with LibreSSL?
I've noticed that a number of static ports don't work because we have some overlap in methods now. arg4random is one. There's some more. Yeah, so we've added stuff now to base that is also in LibreSSL. So I'm not sure yet why that stops working. I don't think it's a big issue for anybody at this moment, but that needs to go. So the clashes between the two is something I can't figure out all by myself.
Okay. So how's been the acceptance upstream? Have they been accepting patches, and have there been any projects that just won't cooperate at all?
Apache didn't want to. The HTTPD project didn't really want to cooperate a lot. Our ports, the maintainer was okay with it, so it is in.
Sure.
But many have been actually pretty. You get a lot of positive feedback from the projects. They're happy that somebody looks at their code, that you rip out old stuff that can. So the desk ones, they're happy that you're just moving them out because that improves their code. It does. It changes nothing to the way their code works. So yeah, usually they're happy.
Good.
Okay.
And then the dead ones, yeah, I'm still looking. I'm digging up corpses basically. So, those are the ones that I think. Well, if I can't find, sometimes it's even difficult to find the upstream project now.
Sure. Things just kind of disappear. Websites go away.
So and or if there's a website, then nothing works where they say that you can send your patches in or submit them in some versioning system. So then it becomes difficult. And the GitHub ones tend to be easiest because I just fork them, do the changes, and send them a pull request, and that's working pretty fine for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I know I had similar problem. Just a man page patch for EE, the easy editor that's in the base system, and I worked on the patch of it, and we got the patch into FreeBSD, OpenBSD, and DragonflyBSD, but trying to upstream it, and I Google around, and I managed to find 2 different websites for the program. One of them advertising a newer version than the other, but both of them being older than the version we have in FreeBSD. And I tried.
So where did
I found
from?
Every email address I could for the author and mailed them all, and most of them bounced and didn't work anymore. And it was just like, well, I don't think there's much hope of finding this guy.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you do then, especially in base? So do you keep it in, or is that then?
I got to commit the man page directly instead of trying to upstream it and then pull it in that way. But it starts to be a question.
No, but it's good that we have that we have this push to deliver back to the upstream projects, so that we also improve on the wider ecosystem, and it's easier for ourselves to when they come back into the ports tree as part of the upstream package.
You don't have to forward port your patch every time they release a new version. That's the lesson FreeBSD is trying to teach everybody who consumes FreeBSD to make an appliance or whatever. Is that, hey, if you push back, if you upstream to us everything that's not your secret sauce, it means you don't have to do as much work when you want to switch from using FreeBSD version 9 to version 10 because we've already ported it forward for you.
Yes, and one of the which one? Python was very good. So all next releases of Python will build out of the box with Libre.
Nice.
3.4 I think is already in ports. I'm not sure about the delivery schedule, and there's patches. So anybody that wants to run it at this moment can check the LibreSSL wiki and the Bugzilla, because there's a lot of patches already around that you could just use if it's not been committed just yet.
Cool. So as an admin of a working system, how would you say maintaining LibreSSL compares to OpenSSL, like advantages and disadvantages?
Well, I was quick off the bat. Last time with the LibreSSL update, I think we were quicker than just about anybody else in getting 2.16 in. The change rate has gone down a bit, I believe. So now we we had a number of shared lib version bumps, and that basically means that you're recompiling half of your ports tree because your SSL library changes. But it seems to stabilize now. So I think this is kind of the last 2.1 version before they go into the 5.7 OpenBSD. Okay. Then we get 2.2. So that probably will be another bump. But other than that, in configuring software, I have not seen any real differences. There's not. Let me think if there's been any that have been. I don't think anything needed actually work to work with Libre instead of OpenSSL.
Yeah, we didn't have to make a single tweak here. Once we switched over to it, everything just kept working. So.
Yeah, so and they tend to be their quality patches. The guys from OpenBSD deliver, I think, a great product. So their patches are good. Information could improve a bit. So now they are sharing the bugs with OpenSSL where they weren't before. So that is also picking up, and that's good. So it's just a rebuilding that you need to do every time.
Sure. So do you think there's a chance LibreSSL will become the standard someday? And if not, what can we do to make it happen?
Well, as I said, nothing much seems to be breaking. So I'm hoping that the ports tree, the base would be in good shape to get started per se. But I saw a message from Franco Fischner from OpenSense that he had some doubts still about integrating it because of the crypto and everything that's going around.
Sure.
So yeah, there will be some more stuff that goes on in base that is not happening in ports, sure. But I'd be happy to try. It's just that's beyond my skill level at this moment.
Sure.
I struggle enough with patching ports.
Well, I think once the package of base happens, it'll make it a lot easier to play around with this. Being able to pull in or pull out Open or LibreSSL to test things.
Yeah. So the next question was, do you think FreeBSD and NetBSD would maybe switch the version they have in the base system to be LibreSSL instead of OpenSSL?
I'd really advise them to look at it, if only because of the number of lines of code that you need to import. It's a lot smaller. You get libTLS as well. So if you need modern ABI, SSL stuff and TLS, you have that as well. So you could switch to something newer. So I think it should be considered, but it might just be too much work for the workload that there is in the base system, and that I can't oversee because I'm not very much in tune with what.
This sounds like a good summer of code project. I might just throw that out there.
Because it's mostly, it should mostly be hacking. There shouldn't be too much that we use in base that is very outdated. So it's not like the port tree. I must hope.
We hope.
I haven't checked it, so it's only guessing. And a summer of code project. Somebody well versed in configuring, in make scripts, and in C coding. Yeah, I think they could take it up.
Honestly, what I'd like to see happen is the SSL we have in base move to be a private library, so only stuff in base can use it. So things like curl from the ports tree wouldn't see it, and so everything in the packages would always come from either OpenSSL or LibreSSL from your ports tree, and only the stuff in base would be allowed to use the base OpenSSL and kind of prevent that cross-contamination problem.
Yeah, and that would be good anyway, because if you need to support your server for a long time, then base will be running older versions, and you don't get the new stuff, which might come up in Libre, like Cha-Cha 2020 and what's the Poly 1305. So it's very cool to look at your Chrome browser and a Chromium and then see that you're using Cha-Cha instead of anything else, because I don't think that comes with any of the other libraries.
Well, the best part about making the SSL library private is it means you could upgrade it in the middle of a release, because the only things that would be allowed to depend on it would be FreeBSD, and they would be updated at the same time. And so it means we wouldn't have to provide, it wouldn't be part of the stable ABI. And so we could, if you're running FreeBSD 9, you could actually get OpenSSL 101 instead of 098 that way. And so.
Didn't you find it funny that last month they released 102?
Yes.
And then they have a new major version out, and it's from 101 to 102, the third digit, which I think it's hilarious that your majors are at that level.
And the minors are just letters after them.
They run out of alphabet.
We're at like 0.9.8 ZF or ZH, something like that. Yeah. We're halfway through the alphabet a second time.
Yeah.
Well, I think making more of these projects in base private is just a good way to go too, because it makes sure you can detect whether your ports are cheating. You know, things are building from base that shouldn't be, and there's no cross contamination.
But yeah, so
going on
it leaves you
there,
free to update the things in base more often, which can be a really big thing once we start packaging base. But you know, we can still have that ABI stability. You know that you compile your app for, you know, you got a binary from a vendor for FreeBSD 10. It's still going to work because it's going to, you know, pull in OpenSSL from ports or something and not depend on the one in base. So the one in base can change what it needs to without causing us all these headaches.
I think this is something we should bring up at the Dev Summit, Alan. Just ask if anyone's working on this or has considered this yet, because this just seems like a really good idea. So.
Yeah, it might not be easy, but
but I think
still doable.
I think most of the things in the base system should be private, just to solve these problems.
Yeah, so I was actually wondering what in the base system, in kernel, so not in the tool set, not in world, but in kernel, requires SSL or OpenSSL.
The kernel does for anything, but in the world you have like fetch and the package itself, and
libfetch. Yeah, those will. And this is also something with Poudriere or no.
Package uses libfetch.
Package is a package.
Yeah, so but if you run, you can't compile the ports package against LibreSSL.
I think that's okay.
It always uses base. So those are the kinds of things, and if that's, but that would mean more work for Porter, because if you upgrade anything in ports, or we have to have multiple versions of OpenSSL and Libre in ports, that means that you have work to do in all of the ports as well. But it's cool to think about it, but yeah.
So have you considered joining the ports teams for either FreeBSD or OpenBSD?
I've not kept it. I'm not against it. It's just that it hasn't come up yet. So I still Kubilai is kind of mentoring me or pesting me with the Python port. Keeps on pinging back and forth to get a proper quality port. I think I'm still learning, but yeah, sure, it makes it a lot easier because I now have over 40 PRs open.
That's a good way to get a commit bit right there.
You will be punished shortly.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Your punishment is impending, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not being blessed, right? It's cursed with a commit bit.
Punished.
It's the phrase going around. Yeah. And there's lots of them with these old ports against that are assigned to what is it? The default list. So there's no committer anyway. So they're going to stay there forever.
Sure.
Yeah. So unless I get some extra help, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Well, hopefully that'll happen soon.
Yeah, there was some stuff going on yesterday. I didn't really understand what was going on about mentoring and. But maybe they're hanging out to see if I can keep up.
Right.
But, you know.
I'll keep sending those PRs.
You just said, you know, it would be nice to have some help. So that raises the question, what's the best way for someone who wants to help to get involved and help you in fixing these?
Yeah, so the wiki page, I try to keep it super up to date. So any PRs getting committed will be reflected in the LibreSSL wiki page on freebsd.org, wiki.freebsd. It also has links to the fixes, but most of them have been done already. And then you have, so if you pick up anyone, edit the wiki page if you have an account, let me know. I'm on Freenode, I'm on EFNet, in the BSD ports and FreeBSD ports channels. Send me a mail. It's all it's all available, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the LibreSSL page now. You're not kidding. There's a lot of stuff on here.
Yeah, I moved out the stuff about the patching, so the known problems section. It's now a link to a subpage because it became too big, too long. So you haven't seen that yet? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I saw it the other day when I was looking at you had comparing all the recent SSL vulnerabilities from the last couple of cycles and how they affected and when they didn't, and so on.
Yeah, I even put that up in Wikipedia, and it hasn't been removed yet, which is a first.
Nice.
You know how that works, right? Usually.
Yeah. Well, that is a pretty cool chart. So you've got the total here. He's got a running total of advisories, LibreSSL versus OpenSSL. And OpenSSL, I guess, up to 35 now, and Libre at 19. So that's good. Yeah, I think that makes a strong case for having switching that in base down the road if that trend continues.
Yeah,
I know I hate getting PRs for that.
Oh yeah, I had a nice discussion on Twitter with Bob Beck, because right with 210 or 211 or 21200 they had this PIDREP issue with the random output, and I put it on medium as a rating. And I got flack from Bob Beck for, that's not a medium, that's a low, if anything. You didn't even get a CVE, so how are you? So that was good. And then I looked at some of the other issues. And there was another one which is similar about random in OpenSSL, and that gets rated low. So I had to rate that one low as well, even though it's... I did want to keep it in because I didn't want to look biased towards Libre.
Sure.
But that's the only issue I think they found separate from OpenSSL in Libre.
Nice. Okay. Well, anything else you'd like to touch on before we wrap up here?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
I must say I was very grateful to FreeBSD for actually doing an exp run for me by switching it on, because I have a measly system running, so it was difficult to. You can't just go and compile the whole port tree. So I had to rush in a bit, especially with curl, I believe, because everything depends on Perl. It seems.
Yep.
But once we got that out of the way, it was pretty smooth sailing.
Yeah, we were glad to do it. I kept checking my email. Oh, did he send me more patches? Watching the pull requests come in.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I now I have a lot of stuff that is committed to ports. So now I need to get it back to you again, or remove it from
I've been pulling our edge tree with syncing it against FreeBSD ports. So we just synced like an hour ago.
But then you overwrite whatever is in.
Yeah, there was conflicts, and I went and grabbed the FreeBSD version, etc.
Yeah.
We've been trying to keep on top of that. It's been smooth sailing so far.
Yeah, so anybody, get in contact with me if you want to help out. If there's anything that you want to know about it as well. And yeah, I hope to get to close this one first, because I still have a couple of there's also total running on how many issues are still open that I want to fix that are related to LibreSSL. And then on to the next project. So SSL v2 and 3, you're my next target.
Right. Put them in the crosshairs. Nice. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today, Bernard. We really appreciate it. Okay, well, thanks for sticking with us, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. That was a lot of fun to record today. But before we get into the news roundup, we do want to mention another sponsor on the show this week, which is going to be DigitalOcean. And we've been talking about these guys for a couple months now. But that coupon code is still active, so you do need to go sign up with that. And that's FreeBSD Now is the code you can put in on their site. That'll give you basically a $10 credit, which you can use to fire up a VM on their server, running FreeBSD, of course. But $10, I mean, shoot, that'll last you 2 months at their $5 a month tier. So you can have a lot of time to mess around with the VM, or if you spin one up where you don't pay monthly, you pay by the usage.
Yes, they have hourly,
depending on what you're doing.
The hourly ones are 0.7 cents an hour.
Yeah. So if you don't even need to have it up all month and just want to fire it up for some weekend warrior stuff and try it out, like that's a great way to go. And that $10 a month will take you a little ways as far as doing that. So definitely check out DigitalOcean.com. And how long does it take to spin up a VM?
Usually under 55 seconds.
Yeah, there's no reason not to. Come on. Everything's on SSDs, and you can ramp it up from there. They offer a bunch of different tiers of service, which will make it easy to spin up your VM anywhere in the world, in the cloud, wherever their data centers are, which are all over.
All over the place. But yeah, the $5 one also includes a terabyte of traffic. And the more expensive ones include even more.
Yeah. So definitely no reason not to try that, especially if you're sitting in your office and you're bored to tears because you're on a Linux workstation and that's all they give you. Well, maybe you can, fire something up in the
Yes.
cloud, mess
Or,
around with some FreeBSD on
if you
the
want to
side.
start playing with one of the with FreeBSD and you don't have a spare machine and you don't want to, overwrite your machine you're trying to do your day job on,
Yep.
then, put one up on
This is
here,
a
and
great
it's a
way.
great way. And you can even turn it off when you're not using it, so that that $10 credit will last you a very long time.
That's
And
right. That's right.
it's SSD, so it'll be fast when you're doing stuff, and you have scalable CPUs, tier 1 bandwidth, lots of it too. And if you have multiple droplets, you can also have a private network between them that doesn't use up your bandwidth.
Nice. So again, digitalocean.com. Go sign up today, and don't forget the coupon code FreeBSD Now.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's get to the news roundup. So first article here, and we were talking about it before the segment, but this is something that's got me really excited. This was just an awesome blog post about using Gorse, which I had heard of before but never really looked at. And I know you said you would
I've
use
used
it,
it
Alan.
once. Devin Teskey dumped the entire history of the FreeBSD source tree. Basically, because our SVN had imported all the logs from the old CVS, we basically had a giant SVN log of every commit to, and then he combined the docs, source, and ports trees into one giant file and ran it through Gorse. And it basically gave this animation showing, you could see the different developers' names floating around, and then they would throw bombs into the source tree, and they got branches and explosions. You can see each different version getting released and all the work that went on, and it was really cool. But I never thought of doing this with it, and it looks really interesting.
So what the article does is he gives a guide. If you're using PF on any of the BSDs, maybe you've gotten bored of just grubbing logs and you want to do something fancy. Well, he's going to show you how you can set up Gorse to have a more cinematic experience where you can view your traffic in a visual manner. So if you've never heard of it, as Alan described, it's basically an OpenGL-based 3D visualization tool. So it's intended for viewing activity on source control repositories. But with a few tweaks, we can make it do all kinds of neat stuff. So when you end up putting the tools together like he shows in the blog article, you end up with a pretty cool eye-catching animation of your firewall traffic. And if you don't believe me, go look at the show notes and watch the YouTube video on there. It's pretty fantastic. I was hooked immediately. So one of our listeners also wrote in to say that he had set this up and almost immediately noticed his girlfriend's phone had been compromised.
Yeah, it was
that's
eating
pretty cool.
up all the traffic on the network.
Right? So obviously having a graphical representation of the traffic could be useful for detecting suspicious network activity. No, that's what I was telling you, Alan. That's what I want to do. I want to get the TV mounted on the wall where it just runs that, so I can any point glance up and see what the network traffic is doing,
what's happening,
going to the router. So that's just really stinking cool. So anyway, I'm excited about that. But yeah, definitely go check out the blog post here on how to do that. And maybe I'll try writing one for IPFW here soon to do the same thing.
It looks fairly simple. It's just getting a list of fields and putting them pipe separated into the log.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. So I think more people should be doing that because that's really cool. Okay, well, next up, we've talked a lot about package-ng, and it looks like the next iteration of that's just around the corner. So package-ng 150 Alpha 1 has been released now.
Yes, and this is the first step towards supporting the packaging of base.
Which is something we're all very, very, very eager for. We're talking about that for a while, but it does some other cool new things. It also now prints which package is the reason for a direct dependency change, so that'll be helpful information.
Find out what's causing, when it's I have to reinstall all of that. Why? Oh, because of that one thing.
Who's the culprit? Yeah, it lets you make better informed decisions.
But also initial support for the provide/requires framework. Basically, this will say now, instead of a port being I need Perl version 5.16.4, it'll say I just need some Perl, and then each of the different Perl ports will say I provide some Perl, and then that way whatever one you happen to already have, it'll be oh well, that'll just work, it's fine. Or a specific package could say I need Perl at least 5.18, but in most cases Perl's not that picky.
A lot of times I just need a copy of Perl.
Or you're installing WordPress. It needs and web server, not a specific. It doesn't have to be Apache. It doesn't have to be Nginx. It can be just any web server, and that'll solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, that's going to be nice. Another thing they've added that's kind of interesting is the new package-R switch, which will allow cross-installation of packages, which will be cool for supporting different platforms, it sounds like.
So it's a little different than the way the chroot version works, but basically would allow you, especially once we package base, to install the base system and all the ports you want into a directory, which you could then use to make an image for your Raspberry Pi. So you can install all the ARM stuff into a directory and then package it up.
That is really nice. Okay, and we do need to remind you folks that this isn't the stable version.
Yes,
so
this
don't
is not
upgrade
even
to it yet on
just
any production system.
This is not even a beta yet. It's still the alpha.
Yeah.
1.4.99.14.
Slippery when wet, dangerous, sharp, all the usual warnings apply here. But if you like to live on the edge, maybe try it out. Test these new options. I know the guys up there who are actually doing the development would find it helpful if you reported issues, if you find any, so we can make the release better for everyone. And it looks like a Dragonfly will most likely pick up this update once it's marked stable as well. So if you guys are Dragonfly users, you may want to take a look at this ahead of time. Okay, so next up we have a welcome to OpenBSD. So we mentioned last week that our listener Brian was giving a talk in the Troy, New York area, and it looks like that has happened, and now the slides from the talk are now online, and they've been generating quite a bit of discussion, and we have some links to the Reddit feeds and Y Combinator where you can take a look at that. And it's simply titled Welcome to OpenBSD, and it kind of walks the reader through an introduction to the OS, how easy it is to get involved, and then start contributing. Other topics include history of the project, who the developers are, what they do specifically, and some of the proactive security techniques and how to finally, of course, get involved with the project.
Yes, the point he loves to rub in the most is that he's an anthropologist. That's what he's going to school for. He's not a programmer, and yet, look what he can do. So if he can do that, being an anthropologist, if you have an interest in computers, you can do this too.
So, of course, as you know, we talk about NetBSD. It seems like every few weeks we got a new article about them running on some crazy new platform, and I guess they have almost 60 supported platforms, and their slogan is, of course it runs on NetBSD. Well, Brian says now that OpenBSD has about 17 platforms and 13 different CPU architectures. It probably runs on OpenBSD or runs OpenBSD. So that's pretty cool. But no matter which BSD you might be interested in, these slides are a great read, especially for any beginners who kind of want to get their feet wet. And this is a safe place to start.
Yes, I loved his interactive slide here. It was like, raise your hand if you've used SSH, if you've used macOS 10 or iOS on a phone, iPhone or iPad or whatever, if you've used Android or Linux, or used the word hackathon, or used the internet. And then, by then, pretty much everybody in the room should have their hand up, and he's like, congratulations, you have a personal connection to OpenBSD.
Right, there you go. But yeah, definitely go take a look at that, and you have to take a look, see what font he used. I bet you can't guess. Okay, well, next up, kind of a sister show to this, but it's been around a long time, is BSD Talk, and their episode 252 is out, and it looks like Brian snuck himself into that since we were just talking about him. He had an appearance in the latest episode of BSD Talk where he chats with Will Bachman about running a BSD-based shell provider. And if that sounds familiar, it's probably because we did a previous show on that as well, although with a different member of the team. But in the interview, they're going to discuss a little bit of what a shell provider does, hardware requirements, how you weed out, of course, spammers in favor of real people using it, and talk a little bit about the community aspect of a shared server as opposed to just running a virtual machine by yourself. So that may be a fascinating listen, especially if you watched our previous episode and want to find out a little bit more about that.
Yes. Interestingly, he also he does a little historic thing at the beginning of each, in the post for each episode, talking about, this episode is brought to you by, and then some random utility you might not have heard of before. And the one for that episode is JOT, J-O-T. And it it's very useful in shell scripts and so on because it can print out a range of numbers. So, immediately all the numbers between 1 and 100, or, start at 20 and go for 70 points, or, every fifth number in this range, and so on and so on. And that's cool. It's I was actually editing the man pages for these utilities a couple of days ago because they were missing the author section explaining who wrote them. Because the copyright message at the top just says University of Berkeley. But if you dig into the code, you can find that these were written in like 1987.
Oh, wow.
And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's lots of cool history in there. And in the process, I learned about a different utility called LAM, L-A-M, which you can use to laminate files together. So you can basically kind of works like cut does. Cut gives you to cut out a certain column from this. Laminate allows you to put the columns back together and make a file.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of neat stuff in base. Sometimes you find things years later after you've been using it for a long time, right?
Exactly. I've been using.
I didn't know that was there.
I've been using FreeBSD for more than 10 years before I learned about Jot, and then it's now been like 15 years when I learned about LAM last week.
Yeah, we've used Jot in some of our shell scripts to get like random numbers, for example, which has been kind of cool.
I've used it for actually for creating the set of directories for the show. I was like, I just want to create the directories for the next 100 episodes, but I want to prefix the numbers, where it's only one or two number so it's padded with zeros and stuff. So the combination of printf and jot, and then I get my directories created with a little for loop.
Okay, so we have our feedback section up next, but before we do, of course, we want to mention another sponsor this week, which is going to be Tarsnap, and tarsnap.com/BSD Now is where you want to go start getting signed up and start doing your backups like in the next couple of minutes. Come on, it's not that hard, but you make your account, deposit a few bucks in there, and that may last you quite a while depending on how much you're backing up. But they have clients, of course, for everything under the sun on there, so there's no excuse not to at this point. And he makes it super simple. Just make sure you print out your key beforehand, because that key is very important, since Colin doesn't keep a copy of it, which he shouldn't. We don't want him to have access to our data, and you shouldn't either.
Right. Actually, I saw on Twitter this morning, hardened BSD developer Sean Webb had an incident with his hot water heater, which I'm guessing involved water going everywhere. And he was like, I really need to start using Tarsnap more.
Right?
Yeah, nothing like getting a good scare to get you to do your backups.
That's right. That's right. Well, don't wait for that scare, folks. And especially if that scare ends up being legitimate because you actually have lost data now. There's no reason to wait that long. Get it done today. Tarsnap makes it easy, and we recommend it.
And, small incremental backups, so there's no reason not to be backing up like once an hour or more. Just, you're working on that code. You don't want to have to redo any of that.
Definitely. Okay, well, let's head over to Christian here first, who writes in asking about virtualization. And you want to read this first one, Alan? And then I'll take the next.
He says, hi, guys. Love the show since episode 1. He says, confusingly, the company I'm working for still runs on Windows servers and doesn't even think about switching. Lately, I've been pushed to update my development laptop, which is an old Dell Latitude E6430 with Windows 7 on it to run Windows 8.1. He says, I didn't do that until now, but gave my commitment to follow their advice before they'll pirate my machine once more in their company-wide IT ops malware package, which has startup scripts, group policies, firewall, antivirus settings, etc. He says, I'm sorry, but I don't trust the illustrious IT ops staff in my company any longer. He says, so this leads to my question. Have you experience, or even better, can you give me advice on what to do in such a case without changing the company? The first thing I'm looking for concerning virtualizing Windows on some BSDs so I can run my daily business on their restrictions, but at the same time being able to switch back to his trusty base whenever he wants to do that. Well, VirtualBox works fairly well on top of PCBSD and FreeBSD.
Sure.
The only thing that's really missing is the fancier USB support, right?
Yeah, USB 2.0 works on it, and I can pass through devices, or I have in the past. It's been a while. I shouldn't say that now. Maybe it doesn't work.
Well, I know that basically the free community edition was missing one feature that they offer in the closed source but free version. I forget what it was, but
and I can't remember what that was either at this point.
But that works. The Zen on top of FreeBSD is coming along very nicely. I saw a demo of it running Windows Server. Windows XP and playing Solitaire, because that's the only useful thing you can do in Windows.
11.0 feature, sounds like.
I think you can run it on 10 stable, actually. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully Brad is working on that right now. Basically, it works now. It's just kind of complicated to install. And so Brad was working on making a port so you can just install Zen and tweak a few things, and you'll have working Zen. And we'll put a tutorial together for that once that's closer to being ready.
Okay.
So yes, there are plenty of ways to virtualize Windows and have that run as a guest on top of your PCBSD. QEMU would also work, but it'd be ridiculously slow, so you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So then he says, so that goes on to his question. So monitoring even encrypted network traffic shouldn't be hard when setting up my prospective BSD virtualization host for playing proxy, but I can't think of any way how to observe Windows and its processes or a potential rootkit on it. He says, I intentionally don't mention any specific scenarios or use cases because I'm still new to the whole idea of getting control over the system, and I'm keen on hearing and learning from you and your audience. I'm not entirely sure what he's asking, but if it's in a virtual machine, it's not really that easy to tell if...
it's not... Network traffic's one thing, but it's not like you're going to peek into the memory of it and other stuff. That's a little weirder.
And basically, to see anything happening in the virtual machine, you would have to start running stuff in the virtual machine to inspect it. And that kind of harkens back to our interview in Malta with Paul Henningkamp, when he said the advantage to a jail versus virtualization is that it's kind of like that two-way mirror that you see on police shows where they're interviewing a suspect or whatever. You can see in from the host system into the guest, but the guest can't see that you're looking, and they can't see out, but also they can't tell that you're looking.
Yep.
The traffic is fairly trivial to do beyond that.
But he needs Windows support, so that's going to be the kicker there. He says, please brainstorm.
Rump kernels is not really something that's going to help you in this case.
No, not in this case at all. He said if you come up with a more illegal solution you can't mention on the show, send it to him.
I can't think of an illegal solution.
No, not at all.
But in general, at some point, you have to just accept what they want and to get the work done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and monitoring your network traffic. I mean, as long as you can see what's going in and out of it from the host, I think that would be a good first start. So, cool. Well, hopefully we're able to help you out a little bit there. Let us know how that goes, Christian. Okay, so next up we have Stefan, who writes in asking about BSD phones. He says, hey guys, thank you so much for your amazing work involving the best OS in the world. Your show is like my weekly BSD church visit. Without it, I'll lose my tech faith. I'm a FreeBSD enthusiast with the ambition of running this wonderful OS on everything. Laptops, gateways, NAS, web servers, already done that. But most of the time I dream of a FreeBSD phone. I ask you if in the future we can see this dream happening, and what is your opinion on this, as you already make such a powerful desktop with PCBSD. Yours, Stefan, who's in Romania, Europe. He says, P.S. on all the podcasts you made or ever make, you'll get my like. Well, we're glad you're enjoying the show out there.
As far as the phone, it's like, running FreeBSD as the OS under the phone, I suppose could be done, although I'm not sure that it would have that. Basically, you'd be running some GUI on top of that, and that would either be, the existing Android ones or something else. But I don't know.
Well, ARM support is kind of there. So, assuming we end up with a phone with some kind of standard ARM support, that they can port FreeBSD over to it, and then on top of it, you'll end up running, like you said, some kind of graphical stack. I know, like my brother doing the Lumina desktop, part of it is being able to have a touch interface for it. So that may be a possible base. But if you want all the apps and stuff, you'd probably be running Android at this point. I hope that happens someday. That would be really cool to see.
It wouldn't be very hard to get to the point of FreeBSD booting on the phone, but sitting at a command prompt
turn it into a phone.
is like how do you actually get it to make a phone call? Yeah, and that's the phones are kind of weird that way, because they usually have a completely separate OS that's actually running the phone part of the phone, and so on, and
yeah. Okay. Well, next up we have Pussniffer's writing in. He asks about PCBSD adventures. He says, "Hey guys, hope all is going well for you. I wanted to write into the show with a quick update. I've convinced my maintenance man to let me install PCBSD on his custom PC tower he had someone build for him. We ordered a new Samsung 850 SSD because I felt he should experience the power of an SSD. The system installed very quickly and is so freaking stable. And the new auto update feature is amazingly convenient. I set the option to auto update everything instead of just system and security, the recommended setting. Can you explain the difference between the two and why you recommend the option to not auto update your apps? Okay. I'll explain really quick what that means. So system and security will update your packages. So what that will do is update your packages on the entire life of that series. So say for PCBSD 10.1, you will get all the package updates and all the base system security updates, right? When you switch it to everything, that means it will auto upgrade to the next major release of PCBSD as well, not the smaller point releases. So that would be like going from 10.1 to 10.2 or 10.2 to 11.0. That would be everything. So you'll come in the morning and find out it installed 11.0 because we just released it last night, and now it has been installed on your system, auto updated to it. We just don't have that on by default because some people may not want to switch to a major new release like that just on the fly. They want to have time to look ahead of time, make sure stuff works and whatnot.
I think that might be slightly confusingly named in that case.
Yeah, we may have to look at renaming that or documenting that a little
just
better.
Like,
but that's,
this is install security updates. This is upgrade me to newer versions or something.
Yeah. Like, do I want major releases happening? So we will take a look at that and see if we can dock that a little bit better for you, so it makes a little bit more sense at first glance. Yep. Okay, so he continues on. He says, I set up Lumina for his display manager. Thankfully, he wasn't stuck on any particular desktop UI due to his unfamiliarity with computers in general. I like to use lightweight desktop managers and was quick to get Lumina installed in place of LXDE once it was announced. Also, I think it's very easy to use because the features are intuitive and the documentation is easy to grasp. He liked it and said it looks very easy to use. He asked me to find an awesome Wi-Fi adapter for it that's supported, and I began my search. I ended up going through the link of the FreeBSD hardware notes for 10.1 release, and he settled on the TP link TLWN723N3. All I needed to do was read the man page and apply the bootloader.conf entries that were mentioned and run the grub make config command and reboot. The adapter only took a few seconds from the time the kernel said it was up to the time it said link was established or link connected. Anyway, I didn't write it down, but it was fast to connect. I tested video streaming online and it works fine. So to my next question. The PCBSD Wi-Fi utility reports that the signal strength is unknown while connected or unconnected, which makes me think it's not supported by the driver. Is that enough to put the device in the missing features category of the PCBSD wireless testing page, or does it belong in the functional device category due to it technically being functional minus the signal strength feature? Yeah, I would mark it as functional with the caveat, like does not have the signal strength, which some people may not care.
The internet works. That's the main criteria.
Yeah, like bits are flowing and you can reach out. Like that's good. But no, that's maybe that's something that you should ping the driver maintainer or see if that's something they could add. But yeah, as long as the if config can report the signal strength, the GUI utility will try and display that. But I know there's a number of them out there that don't. He says the wiki page says the following about tables, and he gives us a link here. Devices in this table already have a FreeBSD driver, but there are problems with the driver. In other words, certain features aren't available or the driver crashes. This goal of this table is to provide information to developers so the driver can be fixed. This means you should reference any existing PRs, URLs containing a description of the problem. If a PR does not exist, consider submitting one. Information on how to submit a useful PR can be found at the following address. And then he lists the next table where it says devices in this table have a working FreeBSD driver, making a quick reference to determine if a device is supported. If your device works and is not in this table, take a minute to create the entry and create an entry for that device. So yeah, I guess I would go with the second table because it does work. It sounds like it connects fast and it's very functional. But again, maybe an asterisk with the caveat does not support signal strength via the driver because, I don't know, for a purchasing decision for me, if I go to the store and that's what they have, like
this one works. Signal strength. Usually, I'm picking Wi-Fi's that I know are the one I want to use, and it's very rarely that I'm picking based on signal strength.
Sure. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. If somebody yells at you on the wiki, you can change it, but that's one of the beauties of wikis. We can move things around. So anyway, I'm glad you had good luck getting that all set up, and hope he enjoys his new computing. But yeah, we'll definitely have to rename that update feature option, make that a little clearer for you so you know exactly what we meant by that.
Yep. Okay, so next question was from Rudst. asking about package dependencies. He says, "Hello all, there's a great show you have there. After watching and learning so much, I now have a question." He says, "I am using FreeNAS, and there I created a jail using the OwnCloud plugin quite some time ago. Now what I want to do is update to OwnCloud 8, and he says it's missing the package php5-xml writer. Well, I thought to myself, let's just package install php5-xml writer. It wants to install that plus Apache 2.2. The thing is, the jail is obviously already running Apache 2.2. Now, if I accept both packages get installed after a service Apache 2.2 restart, I can no longer access the server. Thanks to ZFS snapshots, it's easy as pie to revert back very fast in production use for his own cloud server. He says, now there is my question, how do I install the PHP package without it wanting to install Apache all over again and somehow running 2 instances side by side? Well, I doubt it's running 2 instances side by side, and you also want to read very carefully. It's most likely just wanting to upgrade Apache to a newer version, unless you manually installed Apache or something, and that's why it's not finding it, or not knowing that it was already installed. But it's interesting that
he says it's the OwnCloud plugin. I don't know. Is it possible they packaged it with Nginx and it doesn't have Apache?
That seems possible.
That seems somewhat likely because they might have done that because it would have been smaller.
Yes, and later.
Yeah. So that would be something to look. Maybe it is using Nginx.
So I guess so he used the OwnCloud plugin and then tried to manually update it to OwnCloud 8.
Yeah, he went into the jail and is trying to use packages now to change it up. That would be a good question for the FreeNAS forums to ask how that particular plugin was made.
I'm guessing their answer will be, we'll make an OwnCloud 8 plugin and you should switch to that.
Yeah. Most likely that will be the correct solution. But you can check and find out how it was built. Maybe that'll give you some other tips on.
Yeah. This is something that package 1.5 is trying to fix. Is that somewhere in there, the fact that you're using mod PHP means that it wants to install Apache, a web. It's like, oh, you're using OwnCloud, you're going to need a web server, and it's like, yeah, but I already have Nginx. It's like, yeah, but the default web server is Apache, so you're going to need that. It's like, no,
right? I'm pretty sure I don't need that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, hopefully we'll see that get a little nicer in the future with package 1.5.
Okay. Well, cool. Lastly, we have Shane here who's following up about a previous question we'd had from Robert and back in episode 81 talking about trying to copy a bunch of data over on his PCBSD box from his NTFS disk into a ZFS.
And it was causing him some troubles.
Yeah, slowdowns and whatnot, not finishing. And so Shane writes in, says he's seen some of this since upgrading to 10.1. He said for a while it improved in 10 stable, it seems to have returned again. And he says that it appears to be from ZFS, while the ARC max is set to 2 gigs and top shows it staying at the limit, the wired RAM continues to increase. When the wired RAM gets over 7 gigabytes of 8 gigabyte installed, the machine is history and a hard reset is the only option. He said, I'm now running 10.1 stable from March 12, 2015, and again, it is locked up twice from excessive wired RAM. He said he reported this back in October and closed it a month ago as I haven't seen the issue for a while, but I'm thinking of reopening it, and he posts the bugs URL here. And then he has a small Python script that kind of shows what's going on, allocates RAM and releases it.
Yeah, that moves RAM from the inactive to free. And also, it will cause ZFS to give up its 2 gigabytes of RAM when it detects you're trying to use RAM and there isn't any. But most likely, the wired RAM is being used by something other than ZFS because, Top is saying ZFS is only taking its 2 gigabytes. So it'd be a matter of finding what that is because that's likely the problem.
Well, I think I can answer that. Oh. So when we were looking into the PBI stuff using Fuse, that was a problem we ran into as well. Fuse was really good at allocating memory. It wouldn't give it back. So if you're running the NTFS Fuse driver, there's a good chance it's caching stuff and just keeping it there. I'm trying to remember if there was...
if you unmount the NTFS drive, does that cause it to give it up or not?
If it clears it, I didn't test it with the NTFS. I'm not sure how it uses the Fuse driver, but what we found was while it was open, it just kept growing and it wasn't good.
Yeah. So at some point you might have to unmount the NTFS and see if that frees it, and if it doesn't, try actually unloading the Fuse module, and then you can load it again and mount and do some more copying.
This may be worth reopening that bug report though, just because I do believe it is in the Fuse system, but I don't know who in the FreeBSD community is actively working on Fuse.
Specifically, yes, because in 10, Fuse is is a kernel module. It's not actually in ports anymore.
No, it's in the base system, and that's where we dug into it. And it was like in the VFS layer when we started hacking on it, it just got really scary really quick. And one of the things we noticed was in the source code, there's all kinds of comments like, this Fuse is supposed to do this, but we don't support any of these things. And so there was stuff that certain drivers would expect to do things, and they were just silently ignored in the kernel module. And I think this may have been one of them. But it's been a while now, so I could be wrong. But this was like 2 years ago when we looked at this. But yeah, definitely open that bug report again and post what you're doing and see if anyone wants to take a look at it again. But I'm be 95% certain it's something in the Fuse there.
But yeah, that would be that'd give the developers a place to start looking.
Well, and if there's other people who run in this too, we now have a documented bug report somewhere where they can add.
But based on what you've shown in the email here, and also my emails back and forth with you before the show, it definitely seems like the problem is actually not ZFS. ZFS is behaving itself, only using up to the 2 gigs of RAM, and then when you're running your memfill app there, it's giving up its 2 gigs so that you can have it. And the problem is that's just letting Fuse take more.
Yeah, that would be a good test, though, if you mount the Fuse and then unmount it partway through, see if that wired RAM comes back.
When you unmount, if the wired RAM just goes bleh, then you know, hey, there's the culprit.
Definitely.
And
take a look at the NTFS-3G man page as well. There's a bunch of different options you can set in there. You might find one that makes it behave itself a little bit.
And then there's also, I mentioned vmstat -z that shows the memory output. He only sent me the 2 lines of it about ZFS. But there are probably a couple lines in there that might show, hey, here's the number that keeps going up and up and up. That would be the culprit.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be helpful to attach to the Bugzilla report if you reopen it.
Definitely. Okay, well, I hope that answered your question there, Shane. But yeah, definitely let us know if that gets solved down the road or if there's any work on that. Okay, so now we do have some mailing list gold this week.
This one is hilarious.
Yeah, for the first one from the FreeBSD mailing lists, and it's over by Adrian Chad. And so it's a commit log here, and I'll just read it as is, which this is pretty cool. So the log says, add initial D-Link DIR 655A1 support. This is based on the AP 135 design, and then he lists some of the stats of it, what's available. It has 128 megabits of RAM and 16 megabit of NOR flash, and then a gigabit switch. So it's quite a beefy router device, tested, well, on a unit naturally, obtained from completely messing up an Amazon.com order and getting this instead, and then asking, hey, I wonder if I could.
Yeah, so he was trying to buy something on Amazon and accidentally bought this one instead of what he wanted, and so he got it to run FreeBSD anyway.
Yeah, well, that's one way to do it. So good work, Adrian. That's pretty cool.
And then I think it was Koobs on FreeBSD Help on Twitter who was like, who else wants to mess up some Amazon orders and send them to Adrian?
We should have what we should do is have like a Christmas, like you know how they do like the Secret Santas or like the gift exchange where we just buy random, wireless equipment and things and send them to various developers and then see what shows up in the tree a couple months later.
Yes.
That would be funny. Okay, well, next up we have some OpenBSD mailing list stuff here. It looks like in their CVS list, and they modified LibreSSL. It was Ted Yangst. And the log message says, sorry, Solaris, but mentioning Windows support is a lot cooler. So I guess the reference to Solaris has been nuked there.
Yes, so they removed support for old versions of Solaris and added support for new versions of Windows.
Nice. Well, that really doesn't bring a tear to my eye. So anyway, whatever. And this last one, I'm not sure I quite get. I know it's from a book out, but what is this?
I'm pretty sure this is sometimes spam likes to just grab random literal, like a literature type text and include it in the messages so the spam filters don't block the message because it contains enough text that isn't spam. But then they seem to forget to include the spam. Like normally you would get a message trying to sell you something, and then at the bottom, this text that is not gibberish, it's actual sensible text is just completely out of context. But then it happens to be a lot. You just get email that's just the random bit of text, and it's like, well, what are you trying to sell me? Stop that. So it just says, and Margaret, our maid, wondering why we were so long absent. Supper was on the table and the vins getting cold. On hearing why I wanted the lantern, they both wished to come and help us. Audrey declared that she could carry a basket as well as either of us boys. We must stop and take care of the house, I answered, feeling a little jealous that a girl should fancy she could work as well as my companions and I. Or what? And then the text just kind of ends. It doesn't make any sense.
So the funny part to me is TJ, our producer, apparently had the time to track down what book that came from. And it was a book written in 1880 called The Boy Who Sailed with Blake. So congratulations, TJ. You get the award for looking up random miscellaneous facts on the internet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the patience for that.
And which mailing list is this? FreeBSD-hardware. And I noticed it looks like the message before and the message after this one are both spam as well.
Nice. Yeah, we got several of those mailing lists that seem to capture a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, some of those mailing lists have been around for 20 plus years, and so they've got on every spammer's list ever.
That is true. Maybe it's time to rename them all and prune them, start over. Well, I don't know. It'd probably be riots in the street.
Yeah. It's like, let's move all of the FreeBSD mailing lists to like freebsdmailinglist.com or something.
No, the riots would start if they moved into Google groups or something like that.
Well,
then everyone would freak out.
Google would just turn them off randomly. Right? They just killed Google Code like last week. They're like, here's how to transfer all your stuff over to GitHub. Go away, please.
Yep.
It's like, thanks, Google. You've been helpful.
That's nice. Okay, well, as we wrap up the show here, of course, we do want to remind you guys, send us stuff. We like getting stuff because sometimes there's things we do mess during the week. So send it to feedback@bsdnow.tv, and don't be afraid to write us about your experiences or questions if you have them. And we love reading, what you guys are doing on BSD, and sometimes it makes it to the show. So, definitely keep sending that in. And also, if you're interested in ZFS, specifically OpenZFS discussion, it looks like they're going to be starting up the Office Hours series again on April 2nd. And this one's going to be with Justin Gibbs.
Who was on the show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, from the FreeBSD Foundation. So definitely put that on your calendar if you'd like to get involved with that.
I'm going to have to show up there and ask him some questions.
There you go.
There you go. I know he has some secret sauce that I want.
Alan's gonna mine for those nuggets and get that out.
Exactly. And we also want to mention that, especially if you're a new BSD user, but if you're a BSD user in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, the vanbug.ca is holding an event on April 8th, and they'd like some people to come out. So,
well, it sounds like that's their first event.
I think so.
New user group.
Yes.
So
if you're in Vancouver and been wondering, where are all the BSD people around, come out to Vanbug, and they are going to have an event, and hopefully lots of people are there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, also, if you end up going to that or Vanbug guys, send us a write-up on how it went. We'd be curious to hear. So, of course, you can check the link. We have the link to their site here. It's vanbug.ca, and we'll have that link in the show notes. If you're lazy and don't want to type it in, just want to click something, it is there.
So they're a new user group, but this is actually their second meeting. Their first one was back in February.
Okay,
so they're already established. You just need to go.
Yes, you do need to go. So definitely get to that Vancouver, British Columbia area.
Yes.
So thank you guys so much for being with us today on the show. We've enjoyed it. We'll look forward to talking to you same time next week. And definitely keep that new information coming in. We'd like to highlight what you guys are doing on BSD out there.